Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we do some early spring yard cleanup. So let's go. It is the end of March and it's about mid 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see right behind me, we still have a little bit of snow on the ground, but that's not going to stop me from getting out here and taking advantage of these nice days. It has been a very cold winter for many of us, but on these days where it's in the 40 or 50-degree Fahrenheit mark, I just want to get out there and I want to do whatever I can in my yard. And before we get started, I want to put on some boots that I recently received. I'm so excited to try them on and I want to show you what they look like. The boots that I was wearing last year lasted me the whole year, but they did wear out eventually because I wore them every day in the garden. So a nice company called Cal reached out to me and asked me to try on some boots and see if I like them. So I'm going to put them on today and I'll let you know how they feel once I get walking around in the yard. I really do like to wear boots when I work outside in the yard. When I was younger, honestly, I used to wear flip-flops. I used to even mow my lawn in flip-flops, but as I've gotten older, it's really not good on my feet. And so I prefer to wear boots or even sneakers in the yard just to protect my feet a little bit. So these are the boots that I picked out. I like them because they're taller, and especially where it's still very wet outside, there's snow on the ground, and in the spring we have a lot of rain. These will be perfect for me to wear. I'll see how I like wearing these in the summertime, but then again in the fall time, I know I'll really enjoy wearing these. These will probably keep my legs warm. Just gonna put them on. And I bought the size that is whatever size I wear for sneakers. And so far they feel good. They feel like they fit true to size, which is nice. And I'm just going to tuck my pants in. Why not? So the plan for today is to tackle my side walkway bed. It faces the south side of my house. While I'm working in there, I'm going to be going over the different plants that are in there and how I plan on tackling that flower bed from now throughout the season. So let's get going. I have a covered porch on the side of my house, and this is the door that we use most often when we're exiting and entering the home. And this flower bed that's here, I'm going to pop up on the screen what it looked like when we bought the house about 20 years ago. I'll also pop up on the screen the approximate dimensions of this area, just so you know it. And as we keep going this way, there is the walkway. And then right over here, there used to be 3 arborvitae. We had those removed, and we now have some other plantings that are in that bed. And we can tackle that area a different day. This flower bed has evolved so much over the last 20 years. I continue to change it because as gardeners, it's really hard to just come up with that perfect design and stick with it. And after all, what is the perfect design? I think it's nice to experiment and try different things in our gardens. I highly encourage it. I enjoy the whole process. I think it would actually be kind of boring to come up with that perfect garden design from day one and then be done. What else would we do with our time? So I really want to stress that when it comes to your own gardens. Don't feel like you have to get everything settled right away. It's okay to take your time to play around with things. You might love something for a number of years and then you might change your mind, and that's okay. So right over here is an ornamental miscanthus grass. It's a very tall grass, and I'm going to show you close up what it looks like right now and what we're going to do with it. I've had this grass in this flower bed for at least 10 years, I guess. It's moved around a couple of times. I'm very happy with its placement because I feel like it's what's towards the back of this bed, if you had to call a back of a bed. And it's placed basically in between 2 windows that are behind me. So it's kind of like in the center of those 2 windows. So I really like the placement. And one thing I wanted to talk about that's really important when it comes to grasses is a lot of people say leave your grasses up during the fall time so that you have winter interest. I have tried that after hearing that advice. And I have to tell you, living in New Hampshire, we have very harsh winters, a lot of snow, very heavy snow. And what happens with my ornamental grass is it does not look good if I leave it up. It just flops over, it makes a big mess. It is nothing nice to look at. So when you hear advice like that about leaving things up for winter interest, I think it really depends on what it is and where you live. So in my case, when it comes to a tall grass like this, it's actually better for me to cut it back in the fall time and then in the spring, clean up anything that I didn't cut back. So you can see here that there's still some cleanup to be done. I will post a link to a video down in the description that showed my process for cutting back my ornamental grass. There is a very quick, easy way to be able to do it. And way back in the day, I never liked cutting back my grass. I dreaded it. And in that video, I'll show you how quickly it was for me to cut that grass back. And in case you're wondering, well, why didn't I cut it all the way back down? When I used my hedge cutters, I didn't want to go all the way down to the ground. Plus, I wanted to protect some of the crown of my plant for the winter. Now at this time though, it is safe, it is okay for me to go ahead and cut this way back. We do still have a couple of nights that may be in the mid to high 20-degree Fahrenheit range, but not many. I feel comfortable and I feel like it's going to be okay if I go ahead and cut this back down. So I'm just going to use these Fiskars loppers and I'm just going to cut right at the base as low as I can go. Now is a great time for me to be doing this. I don't want to wait too long because what's going to happen is new growth is going to be emerging from the base. And once that new growth gets too tall, it's really hard to come in here and cut back all the old growth. So you definitely want to do it before a lot of that new growth comes in on any of your ornamental grasses. So I'm just going to the base and I'm giving it a nice cut. I'm going to try a different tool and I want to just see if these work a little bit better. When it comes to grasses, it's always good to try different tools. Gardening is fun, but it is not always that we know the right answer right off the bat. Sometimes we have to experiment, right? When it comes to a lot of things gardening related, until we find something that works for us. In the fall, when I cut this miscanthus grass back, I used electric hedge trimmers, and those worked out fabulously. It was just so easy. And I probably could have pulled that out today and cut the rest of this with the electric hedge trimmer. But honestly, I was being lazy and I just wanted to use some hand tools. After a long winter of being inside, I kind of need the exercise because after all, working out in the garden can take a lot out of us, but it's a good thing. So this is good exercise for my arms. I try to look at the positive of everything. I don't want to just find the easiest way all the time. Plus, I was being lazy. This little tool, I love it. It's just basically a hand rake, but the tines or whatever you call it are bendy. I don't know, I've had it for a long time, so I don't even know what the brand is of it, but I love it, and if you don't have one, I highly recommend it. It works out great, especially if you have an area like this where it's all mulched and you want to try to pick up some of the loose debris, but you don't want to take the mulch with you. Okay, I want to share one last thing about the miscanthus. So since it's a number of years old, I'm pretty positive there are sections inside of it that are old and therefore are no longer growing. And you'll notice that sometimes with your grasses, that you'll have an area that basically has died off. That happens very often. There's nothing wrong with your grass. That just means it needs to be divided and you need to pull that dead part out. So as this grass starts coming alive and waking up in the spring, later in the spring, I'll show you my process for digging this up. It will be a beast, I can assure you, but it has to be done. We're going to dig this up, we're going to divide it into pieces, and then I can put a small piece back in here. I want it to be big enough that it still makes an impact in my garden, but then I can take the other pieces and move them around my yard. So be on the lookout for that in a future video. I have a couple of mums, also known as chrysanthemums, that are perennial. And some of you might be wondering, wait, what? Mums can be perennial? Absolutely. There are many mums, including garden mums, that can be perennial. I will add links to videos down in the description for you to check out in case you're wondering more about that. That right there is a mum. It's really pretty. It's a purple color. And as we move this way, there is another one that's over here. That's a purple color. I'm going to take you in closer and I'm going to show you what I do in the springtime to cut that back. Now I will say I left all that growth there on top of it during the winter months. That is very important, especially with perennial mums. You want to leave that top growth on there to protect the crown. I feel comfortable cutting it back at this time. I could wait a few more weeks, but I don't think the few days of cold weather are going to harm it. And that mum, in fact, as well as the other one that I just showed you, both of them have been here for a few years, so their roots are well established. I'll take you in closer and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I want you to notice all this lush green growth. This is new growth for this season. So we want to free it and we want to remove all this old growth. I'm just using these hand pruners, and you can use whatever you want as long as they're sharp. I'm going to follow each branch down to the very bottom base and I'm going to cut. Now, again, is a great time for me to be doing this, because if I wait too long, what's going to happen is the growth of the mums is going to get taller and taller. It's going to get very hard for me to come in here and cut this back. So I'm just following it down to the base and I'm cutting. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to clean up some of the leaf litter that has collected. I had this purple colored mum in my previous house from 20 years ago. And I had this originally in my old arborvitae bed. And what happened is every single year after I planted it there, it would decline. And I think one of the reasons was the arborvitae were taking all the water, nutrients away. And not only that, they were shading the mums. Because when we first bought our house, those arborvitae were very small. And then every year, because we didn't cut on them, they just got bigger and bigger. And by doing that, they shaded out these mums. So I mentioned earlier garden mums. So in the fall, when you are buying your mums, look for mums that say garden mums on them or hardy mums. Typically, those are the mums that you want. You don't want florist mums, because those mums most likely will not come back for you. So you can see this growth right here was being covered by all the leaf litter, and that's why it's a light green color, and it will become a nice darker green now that it can see the sunlight. And to be honest with you, if I was overly worried, I could take something and cover this on the few nights that we have left that are going to dip down in the 20-degree Fahrenheit range, especially if it's low 20 degrees Fahrenheit. I may do that just to be safe. But I don't want to wait any longer. I want to tackle this project and get this done. Because you can see, once again, these guys are waking up, and yet they were all covered. They really need to see the sunlight. This year, when I'm working in my flower beds, I'll try my best to talk about certain plants the best that I can. Anything that I can teach, anything that I've learned over time. So as we talk more about these hardy mums, in that video that I made that's linked below, I explained that you want to get mums in the ground as soon as possible, as soon as you see them in the late summer, early fall months. And the reason for that is because you want to get those roots to establish themselves. Mums take a long time for their roots to establish. And if you want to play it really safe, when you get those mums in the ground right away, when you buy them in the late summer, early fall, you could always add some sort of a root stimulator, something like biotone, just to get those roots to establish themselves quicker. The other thing I'll share is that you want to cut back your perennial mums a few times during the growing season. And at least here in New Hampshire, when it comes to cutting them back, I can do it about twice. I can do it once in probably the late spring, early summer, and then I can do it again before the 4th of July. After that, I don't want to be cutting on it, because after the 4th of July, there's a chance that if I cut on them again, that they may not bloom for me in the fall. And the whole reason for cutting on them is not only to make them bushier, but so that they're not so tall and leggy and then flop over when they bloom. So it makes it more of a nice, round, compact mound, kind of like what you would normally see when you buy mums in the fall time. I'm just going to do this because I did have some mulch that was around it, and I just want to try to free it all so that it can wake up. And it does spread. You can see it's spread quite a bit here. Okay, we're going to tackle the second purple colored mum that I have. If any of you saw that video in the fall where I showed you my process for buying some mums and getting them in the ground, I think in that video I used the biotone fertilizer, and I encouraged some of you, whoever were watching, to try doing the same thing. Let me know in the comments if you tried it and if you have any new growth at the base of your mums. I'd love to know. I love mums, but I just think it's such a waste to buy them every year. I mean, if we can save money in our gardens, why wouldn't we want to do that, right? And technically, you could take these mums and pot them up in the fall time if you really wanted to. I will try to do that this year. I will try to pot some of these up in the late summer, and I can show you that, and use them for display in some of my pots and containers. And then I don't want to just have them die, because then they can't go back in the ground after that, because they will not have had enough time to establish their roots. So then what I would plan to do is just overwinter them in my garage. Now there are a lot of different heirloom mums out there, and I would imagine those work very similar to these ones here. I don't know where I got these from. Like I said, they're over 20 years old. I've had them since before my son was born. But like I said, then they just kind of started dying off on me until I moved them into this bed here. It's important to be cleaning out our flower beds and allowing the new growth to come in, because you can see this is not good. They need to be a green color. So it's actually a good time to be doing this. The plants are a little confused, at least here where I live, because some days it's 60 degrees, some days it's snowing and 20 degrees. I feel silly not showing my face while I'm doing this, but to be honest with you, I feel like it's more important for you to see close up what I'm doing here, rather than just seeing it far away and just seeing me doing this whole process. I'd rather have you seeing up close what's happening, in case you need to be doing the same thing and you're just trying to learn. Or if you're planning to buy mums and overwinter them, which I really hope a lot of you try to do this year. And if you try doing it for the first time, I need to hear from you. Let me know, how did they do? If they didn't do well, let's talk about why. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to mums is dividing them. I prefer to divide my mums in the springtime. And it's for the same reason I mentioned earlier. The mums need a long time for their roots to establish, at least here where I live. So I need to get them established well before the winter. I think that's the nice thing about all these gardening YouTube channels, is you can learn so much from so many different channels. And my hope is, even if you live somewhere remotely different than where I live, maybe, just maybe, we have similar things that we're doing, like starting seeds indoors, or growing mums, or pruning back our ornamental grasses. There's a lot that, as gardeners, we have in common, even if we live in different areas. When I work in my garden, I like to actually kind of do it slowly. I don't like to do a rush job. I'd like to do a good, decent job, so that I hopefully don't have to come back to a certain area or a certain plant for a little while anyway, because I do have quite a few different beds, pots, containers that I tend to. So I'd rather just kind of do it in a nice, good way the first time, and then come back again and do the next step that needs to happen. But this is looking so much better. And if by mistake, when I am cutting, if I did cut a little bit of the green, it's totally fine, because like I mentioned before, as it is, I'm going to be cutting back these mums a few times during the year. So it's totally okay. I just wouldn't want to be doing this pruning job in the middle of summer, because you can see, I mean, the new growth needs to come up. It needs to wake up properly without all this old growth around it. A few years ago in this flower bed, I divided a whole ton of perennials, and I'm going to put a link to that video in the description. A lot of my videos now are more instructional, where it just shows how to divide one plant. But in that video, I divided a whole bunch of plants in this bed. So I will link that in case you want to check it out. Some of the plants that are in this bed, other than the mums and the miscanthus, include peonies. There are a lot of different kinds of dianthus. There are a ton of daffodils. In fact, there are snowdrops. I'll show you those in a little bit that I moved in here last year, and they're super sweet. There's a lot of bloodroot that should be coming up pretty soon. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut some of these back a little bit more just because they're sticking out quite a bit. There is a large rhododendron that's in here as well that I've talked about it before. I'd like to move it because it's gotten so big, and rather than cutting it back every year, I'd rather just find a permanent home for it where it can do its thing. And there are a lot of other perennials that I can't even think of right now, but as we work in this bed more during the season, I'll definitely show you what's in here. I'm going to pop up on the screen some small mums that I bought at a very, very, very decent price from Walmart. And I showed you in that video my process for basically getting mums to overwinter. So one of those small mums was right here. And if you look, it's just starting to push out some new growth. And a lot of the old growth has kind of fallen apart. To be honest with you, I'm not going to remove it. For right now, I just want to leave this guy as is because we planted it last fall. I just want to give it whatever little protection I can. And the days that it is going to be 20 degrees, I'm going to come right in here and probably put a little bit of mulch on it just to protect them. I don't want to lose them because I'm super excited that they did survive, which I figured they would, but you never know, right? And here's another one of those miniature small mums. And I call them miniature. I don't know if they're always going to be miniature, but when I bought them, they were small. And it's right over here. It's starting to put out some new growth at the base. Once again, if I need to, I can always come in here and just put some sort of leaves or mulch around it just to protect the base on those cold nights. And look how sweet that crocus is. I had moved some crocuses in the green. And I'll talk more about that in a future video. But basically, it's just moving the bulbs when they're still green. And at the base here was another mum. I can't tell if it survived, but at this point, I'm not going to mess with them. I'm glad that I can see that they are starting to wake up, so I'm going to leave that one alone. But if you look right in the center of it, you can see that it's green. So I feel pretty confident that it should be growing. It's just going to take its sweet time, and we'll let it. And as we make our way to the other side of the bed here, if any of you have been following me, then you'll remember we also planted a mum over here. I believe it was like a red color. And if you look at the center, you can see it's pushing out new growth. Once again, since we just planted this last year, I don't feel comfortable pulling off all the old growth quite yet, and I'm going to leave it. I think that's an important lesson for us in our gardens, is to pace ourselves. We're always rushing in life with everything that we do. When it comes to our gardens, what's the rush? Let's take our time. Let's enjoy the process. So I'm very happy that we cut back those couple of mums, but I am not in a rush to cut all the mums in this bed. And I think that's important to share too, is that when you work on a flower bed, you don't necessarily have to do every single thing in that bed to get it done and right off the bat. You can tackle small things and then come back and do something else. So I wanted to, for this bed, tackle those couple of mums and the grass. I'm very happy with that. And the next thing I'm going to do is quite simple. It's something that maybe a lot of us have to do anyway. And all it is it's cleaning up the leaves, all the leaf litter that's in here. Now is a great time for me to be doing that. And as I'm working and cleaning up the leaves, I can talk a little bit about what plants are nearby and what my plans are for them. So we're going to start right over in this area here, and I'll show you what's happening in that section. So clearly you can see this cute little guy. I have some crocuses that I planted here last year. Again, they were in a temporary holding bed in my backyard. I dug them up and I moved them out here. So they're all starting to come up. And in fact, this one here is hidden beneath this dianthus. I have a number of different dianthus going on here towards the front. these are all a white color Dianthus, and then behind them towards the back are a pink color Dianthus. The first thing you'll notice is a difference in color. This looks like more of a lush green color. This is a darker color. This one looks dead. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take my hand rake. I'm going to take out any of the small leaf litter that's in here. And then I'm just going to basically be brushing or combing my Dianthus just to wake them up a little bit. But on a different day, I will show you how I take care of all my Dianthus. They put on a fabulous show during the springtime. In fact, what you're looking at on the screen right now is what the Dianthus looks like when it's in its glory. And it's going to only be a matter of months when we see that show. So I'm just coming in here and trying to wake up all my Dianthus. And by doing this, I'm also just brushing out all of the old stuff that's in here. And normally what I would do is I would come in here and I would hack back my Dianthus really, really hard. But for today, I just don't care to do that because we still have cold weather. So I'd much rather just do a simple cleanup job with all my Dianthus. And I'm not doing it too hard, just enough to try to remove some of the old stuff. And I will have to monitor this one because it definitely appears to be dead. And if it is, it's totally fine because it would give me a chance to divide some of the existing Dianthus that I have. If you can believe it, I had only started with one pink and one white Dianthus plant. A lot of people ask me, well, when did I buy them? Honestly, I don't know, but I don't believe it's been more than 10 years. If I had to guess, it's probably been about 5 years. And pretty much every year since then, I have divided the Dianthus. And with that, it's allowed me to make basically a Dianthus hedge all the way around this garden space. And I really like it because it looks beautiful all year long. It really does. You can see right here, there are more crocuses coming up. When I planted them, I just kind of planted them here and there and everywhere. But I think also these Dianthus have grown. Like everything grows, right? It's just, that's what happens. I'll watch my eye on this one too. I'm not quite sure what happened to these two guys, but that's quite okay. So yes, when you see Dianthus in the store, it might be labeled as an annual. Try it. Try to plant it and see if it'll come back for you. Many times they'll mark them as an annual when in fact the plant is a perennial. And I don't mean that for any annual out there. I'm talking specifically about Dianthus. Now, a lot of you know I love collecting the seeds from plants. And I have collected the seeds from Dianthus. I think it's worth it if it's a Dianthus that you don't have and you see it somewhere else and you want to have that Dianthus. But otherwise, if you have a Dianthus in your yard and you just want to propagate it, it's much easier to just divide it. And when I say much easier, what I mean is you're just going to get that nice big plant right off the bat. Versus if you grow it from seed, you'll end up with a small sprig of a plant and you'll have to be patient. And nothing's wrong with that. But if you have the plant already in your yard, I definitely recommend propagating it through division. On my channel, I really try to show you all of that. I've made videos showing how to propagate Dianthus. It's great to be able to know how to do that. It's also important to know proper pruning for different plants, including Dianthus. This plant really benefits from being cut back hard a couple of times during the year. Many times it'll actually bloom for you again in the fall time. It'll throw out a couple of blooms. So the first flush that comes out is beautiful, right? It's like a very, very nice flush. And then during the summer, it basically, I'd say, goes dormant. This is still beautiful. It's nice and lush and green, but it's not going to bloom as much during the summer. But then as the weather cools down during the late summer, early fall, you'll be surprised and all of a sudden your Dianthus will start sending out some color again. Not a lot, but enough to add a little bit of interest. And I imagine in the warmer climates, like down south, for example, down south in the United States, I imagine in those climates, this definitely acts as an evergreen during the winter months. You can see for us during our winter months, it's not really an evergreen. It definitely kind of looks ratty and dies back, but it will bounce back in no time. I haven't talked about this Dianthus much. Now this one, I know I got this originally, a very, very small piece of it from my mother-in-law's yard. And then in that video that I've linked below, I showed how I went about dividing this Dianthus. Now you would think that the structure and the roots of this Dianthus would be the same as these Dianthus. No, it's different. But I was able to successfully divide it. Just trying to free my little crocus plants here. You can almost see this mats down. It kind of creates a mat. And yet when it creates the mat, it doesn't just root itself as it creates the mat. It's the funniest thing. So we're just gonna go like this. Doesn't look very good, but I want to be able to see the crocus. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just very lightly trying to take out any leaves or any mulch and just wake these guys up. Now, in case you're wondering what color this Dianthus is, it's a really pretty, I would say light pink color. And then it has kind of like a dark pink center to it. It's really, really pretty. I just, like I said, I don't necessarily love the growth habit of it, but it is very pretty. Some of you might be wondering, why did she plant the crocuses beneath each of these Dianthus? I swear, I didn't think I did. So I don't know what happened. I'm going to blame it on the Dianthus. I'm going to blame it on the fact that the Dianthus got bigger. It wasn't here last year, I swear. And the same applies for the mums. The mums were not here. All of this just grew. It's easier to blame it on the plants. The plants can't talk. It feels really good to be outside. I really could have stayed inside and done more with seed starting, potting up. But I think what I'm going to try to do is maybe in the mornings, stay inside when it's cold outside and do that type of stuff, anything with seed starting or potting up. And then in the afternoons, come outside and work in the yard. I love perennials because they come back year after year. But I equally love annuals. And because I have a backyard plant nursery, that topic comes up quite often. Because for many of the years I've been selling my plants, which has only been 3, most of the people that buy plants from me make that statement. They're like, oh, I don't like annuals. I only want perennials. And I totally get that mindset. I mean, annuals are expensive. But I have to say, it's nice to have both in the yard. Perennials come back every year, but they typically only bloom for a certain period of time. Now you can stagger it so that you have different perennials blooming at different times in your yard. But there's something to be said about having annuals also, because annuals just give you that all-season color, or almost all-season color. And I really appreciate that. Now, of course, I start a lot of my annuals from seed, pretty much all my annuals from seed. So it's not a big deal, but I get it if people don't want to spend the money on annuals because it can get expensive too. So I'll tell you very quickly what I normally do with my Dianthus, but I will show it in a video, and I have videos that show my process. I come in here and I hack this way back because all this scrubby growth, if I don't hack it back, it's going to look really bad. Like, you know, if you pick up some pieces, they're pretty scrubby. And new growth will be coming. I can see it. New growth is coming from the base. So even though you see the green here, it's important to cut back all the scrub, all this top part. And I'll be doing that within probably the next few weeks. Last year, what I did was I also sprinkled 10-10-10, which is an all-purpose fertilizer. It's a balanced fertilizer and slow release. and I have a ton of it, and so that's why I'm using it. You can use whichever fertilizer you want. So I put a 10-10-10 around all of them, and I just scratch it in, and I do that in the spring. So that's pretty much what I will be doing, just as a heads up. But I won't be doing that today. So I just want to show you a couple of things. So we worked on the mums, and again, notice the light green color in the center. On a different day, I'll bring you back to the mums and I'll show you what they look like once they've woken up more. And as we make our way this way, this is where we've worked so far. So again, all we've done is basically just scrubbed out all the leaves, any of the dead growth that was on the dianthus. And I want you to see when you look at the dianthus on this side where we've worked, and then when you work your way this way, you can kind of see the change in color. And all the, I'd call it the old growth or the dead growth from last season. So I wasn't planning on talking the whole time. And I may probably just turn off the video at some point. But regardless, hopefully you're enjoying all this and learning. So that's what that looks like. That's the before, and then that's the after. I kind of like doing this while talking to you because I feel like I'm talking to someone. Otherwise, what would I be doing? I would just be listening to music, and that's kind of boring. And it's fun, I feel, to go over what my plans are for this bed, like what's next. Because perhaps you also have a flower bed that has some of these plants and you're wondering what's next. Scrubbing it, and I'm admiring the little pansy that's here. I mentioned it in a previous video. I have grown pansies from seed before, and as much as I love it, I think it's great, and I'm not knocking it if you are growing pansies from seed this year, but my experience has been that they bloom, but they don't bloom until a little bit later, and they're just not as robust or as strong as the pansies that, I don't want to say they overwinter. I kind of feel like they drop their seeds in the summertime, and then a new little baby plant gets created, and then that baby plant overwinters. And I feel like, I mean, haven't we heard that that happens with other types of cool weather plants? Like sometimes you'll hear that about poppies, snapdragons, lots of different plants that like cool weather. I feel like the same must be true with the pansies. So if you have pansies and they go to seed, what I recommend is try to sprinkle the seed somewhere in your garden during the late summer. But if you live in the South, you probably want to wait. You basically want to do it when it's not that hot anymore, when the nights are getting cooler, kind of like you would with any of those other cool flowers. You want the seed to germinate and you want a small plant to start. So I recommend trying that because that must be what happens in my yard. It's not planned. It's not something I consciously do. So I don't know if any of you were with me or remember when I moved some of my snowdrops here. I have a small cluster here, and then I have other small clusters as you work down that way. They're still very small, and I want them to naturalize, but I just wanted to show them. They're very cute. I've had them for a few years, and I had them again in a temporary area in my backyard. And then last spring, I made a video showing my process for digging them up, bringing them out here. We divided them too. Even though there weren't many, we still, you know me, I'm going to divide whenever I can. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, they naturalize. I know this is not necessarily a shady area, but I think they should do fine out here. They look really pretty. When it comes to moving spring bulbs like the snowdrops or the crocuses that I showed you, again, I moved those last year when they were in the green. And in the green just means moving a spring bulb after it's bloomed. That's the key. You do want to wait until after it's bloomed, but while it still has green leaves. Many times you'll see resources that say you want to wait to move any of those spring bulbs until the foliage has died back. And I forget, I think it varies from bulb to bulb. It might be 6 weeks after the bulb has bloomed. But basically, it's some amount of time that you want to wait. And you typically would wait until the foliage is starting to die back and look brown. But you would move them well before the plants go dormant. because they will go dormant and then you're not going to know where they are. So we've made our way all the way around. So you can see towards the front of the flower bed. We've made our way all the way up to that bucket. I am going to turn the camera off and I'm just going to go to town and I'm going to finish up this whole area here. And then I'm going to go this way and do that whole area because there are some other goodies in here that I want to show you. But let me just finish up this job first because as you can see, it's quite repetitive. It has gotten cold out really fast, but I was able to clean up all of the dianthus. And I did want to show you, it might be an evergreen where you are, and it's semi-evergreen here. This is candy tuft. Last year I really hacked it back. I cut it back really hard. So we'll see how it does this year. And all I started doing was basically pulling out the leaves that have been tangled inside of the candy tuft. Candy tuft is a beautiful perennial and it blooms in the springtime, around the same time that the creeping phlox blooms. So there's another big grouping right there. And then I have a couple more over here. So I did go ahead and I started removing all of the leaves that were tangled inside of it. If you have candy tufts, let me know what you do in terms of pruning it, because I tend to prune it right after it's done blooming, but I feel like it still looks kind of scraggly. Do you prune it back really, really hard? I'm a little afraid to do that, but I'd love to know if you have candy tuft, what you do. So let's go ahead and finish pulling the leaves out of there. And then I think the last thing we're going to do, because it is getting quite cold out, right in here, we're just going to cut back those. Those are an annual. They were calendula. They looked really pretty when they bloomed. They definitely dropped their seeds because they always do. So we'll see those again later in the season. So let's just finish up this cleaning job. I am glad that we basically woke up the dianthus. I call that step one in my spring maintenance for dianthus care. And on a different day, we will do step two. This really is such a beautiful plant. I just don't know what to do with it because it is very, like I mentioned, it's very scraggly. So I worry if I cut it back really, really hard, what would happen to it. But I tell you, I did cut it quite a bit. Maybe I did more of a pruning on the outside. Maybe I just need to come in and hack it. And if I do that, it's probably going to be after they're done blooming in the spring. And I know one of you mentioned to me before that you've had success taking the tips and getting them to root. So if I'm going to do that, I might as well try to take cuttings and get those to root. It would at least be a good experiment for me to try. Calendula is wonderful to have in the garden, and it does self-seed itself very readily. In fact, last year what I did was I came out here when it had gone to seed and I collected the seeds from it, but then I also came in and I sprinkled seed all over, not only on this side of the bed, but on the other side of the bed, because I want to say for the last at least 2 or 3 years, the calendula has self-sown in this area, but it's never self-sown behind me on the other side. And I thought, why not? So I did sprinkle some seeds on that side as well. So let's see if those germinate. They should. And I'm noticing that the snowdrops are still slowly coming up. But again, I did divide them last year. So that's why their colony is not so big. I said I would be done, but I'm going to just pick up the rest of these leaves here because if I don't, they're just going to blow into another part of the bed. And at the base of the leaves are the snowdrops, and we want to enjoy them. And there is another calendula that's in here as well. But I really hope you are enjoying this kind of format where we're tackling a small project, a small bed like this, and then I'm talking about the plant that I'm working on and maybe explaining a little bit in terms of how to care for it during the season. But definitely when it comes to individual plants like the mums and the dianthus, when it comes to fertilizing, pruning, all those types of things, propagation, I either have videos on that or I'll be making videos so that you can also search for those anytime you want. And I do recommend that if you haven't seen a lot of my videos, do a search on the channel and just search a topic, whatever you're looking for. and see if I have a video on it, because you just never know. First of all, I wonder if you see Winnie. Many times during the season when I'm going to be working out here, especially as dinner time approaches, which will be later in the afternoon, you will often find Winnie in that window. So just know that. If I'm ever out here, look for Winnie. Okay, so we made really good progress, and that cord, in case you're wondering what that is, I have a heated bird bath. I love to bring in all the birds. We have a lot of bluebirds during the winter. And I tell you, they really enjoyed that bird bath during the winter when it was so cold out. So we made really good progress here. And like I mentioned, I planted these crocuses here last year, and they were in my backyard for a number of years, and I moved them. So I am really looking forward over the next few years for those crocuses to fill in. They are basically in between each of these groupings of Dianthus. So you can kind of see them if you look this way. And in terms of cleanup, there's just some minor cleanup, but it needs to be done. That's all in here. There's a bunch of leaves and just cutting back some smaller perennials. And you can see a bunch of green growth there near the rock. A whole bunch of spring bulbs are going to be coming up. You can see there's daffodils, and then there are muscari that are also there. Around this rock, there's also some hyacinths. It just looks really pretty when it's blooming. So it's important to me to get this particular flower bed cleaned up because I really want to enjoy all that spring color. And soon enough, it looks kind of like an eyesore now, but I will be removing all of that. But you know that we still have those cold nights and those birds need water. So I wanted to bring you in closer for the snowdrops, and just look how sweet they are. These are, I think they're just like the single variety. Very cute, very pretty, very dainty. And again, when you look down this way, you can see that there are a few little groupings. Just imagine every year, each of these will get bigger and bigger to form a nice colony. And I mentioned about the daffodils. So that's, you can see they're all coming up. And then the grape hyacinths are also popping up. And that's why it's important tomorrow when we come out here, we're just going to do some cleanup all around here because there's a lot to be cleaned up. The other thing that I wanted to point out was at the base of the rock, there are a ton, I don't know how many, but there are a ton of sea holly seedlings. And I know you might be thinking that's a good problem to have, but they have a taproot to them, and they are a beast to remove. And you really can't see it right now, but there are a lot of seedlings all around this rock. So when we tackle cleaning all the leaves around here, I can give you a better look at that. Is it time for dinner? Okay, let's go in and have dinner. Well, it's the next day, and I have to tell you, it's a beautiful day here in New Hampshire. We are due to get some freezing cold weather, some ice, maybe some snow in parts of New Hampshire. I wanted to get out here and I wanted to tackle finishing this job, and I also want to try to work on the old arborvitae bed because it's such a small bed. I figured we can bang that out in no time. I wanted to give you an update on the boots because I promised I would do that. And after wearing them most of the day yesterday, including walking around the yard, I like the way that they feel, but I was walking around my yard in some areas where there's still snow on the ground and it's pretty mucky and wet, and my feet didn't get wet. So they are definitely waterproof, which is nice. And I noticed because it has been still a little cool outside, they keep my legs warm, which I do appreciate. Probably though in the summer, I might feel a little too hot in a boot that's this big. I think these are great for the spring or the fall, and I'll be looking around for boots that are shorter that I can wear in the summertime. All right, we're very close to finishing up cleaning this flower bed. Let's get it done. So last night I got thinking about the bird bath. We literally only have a couple of more days that are really cold, and after that, the water should be fine for the birds. Worst case, I can come out here with hot water and fill up all the bird baths in my yard. So we're gonna go ahead and just remove it because I want this area to look pretty, especially once the spring bulbs start blooming. And as much as that's functioned really well during the winter months for the birds, at this point it needs to go. So the biggest thing I want to do around the rock is just remove any of the leaf litter that's here. And there are some perennials that have just died back. So I'm just going to use my hand rake and I'm just going to rake around, get all the leaf litter, get any of the dead stuff that's here, just to basically clean up this area. The reality is leaves will come and go. That's just the way it is when you have woods all around your yard. But at least if I kind of clean up this area, it'll look good. And the few leaves that come along the way, I can just pick out as I see them. I really love the snowdrops. I'm so glad I put them in an area where I can enjoy them. And I can't stress that enough, that if you have small little bulbs or plants that come up just like these snowdrops, you want to put them in a place in your yard where you're going to walk by or you're going to look out a window and you're going to enjoy them. I had them, like I mentioned earlier, in a temporary spot. I basically bought a bunch of spring bulbs like a number of years ago, and I didn't know where I wanted to put them, so I just put them all in this holding bed area in my backyard. And they stayed there for a few years, and then, like I said, last year I moved these guys out here. And they have brought me so much joy because I can actually see them. I don't have to really leave my house. I can just look out the window and I can enjoy them. I had bought just one bare root sea holly a number of years ago. Actually, a number of years ago. It was probably like 3 years ago. And it dropped its seeds and it's just everywhere in this bed. But it's such a pretty plant. As I'm cleaning up this area, I'm noticing I'm waking up some bulbs here, like right over here. I know in this area I have hyacinths. So the hyacinth you can actually see it. And what I'm cutting back is just where the sea holly had bloomed last year. And again, my goal is to come in here and just get after all of the sea holly that's in here. And what's going to happen is it's not going to be happy because it has a taproot. And that's okay. It will recover. But if I wait too long to remove all of the sea holly in here, then it's not going to be well. It's not going to go well for the plant. Now I'm also uncovering all of my daffodils that I have around here. Over the last number of years, I have been really good about dividing my spring bulbs. In fact, in my yard, these are the very first spring bulbs I ever had. And they're just the normal, regular yellow daffodils that you see, but I love them. And it's been a number of years, actually, since I've come in here and divided these. So they are due to be divided. Here's another hyacinth. So you can see there's a couple. One here. Here's another hyacinth. So far we've uncovered 3 of them. And I can see another one's poking its head out, just barely over here. A lot of times when you have cold, freezing weather coming, a lot of people worry about, oh no, but what about my bulbs? They're all waking up, like these ones here. Technically, even though they're coming up, there are no blossoms on here. So even if we dip down to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, these will be fine. They will totally be fine. The problem is if they had blossoms all on them and we got 20-degree Fahrenheit weather, then I most likely would lose the blossoms. I'll give you a little bit of a teaser on the screen of what this garden bed is going to look like in about 1 month from now. I just can't help it. I have to share it. It's so pretty when the bulbs are blooming. I first started with the daffodils, and then I eventually made my way and divided a whole bunch of my muscari. And I put a bunch all over my yard, including in this bed. So you basically have the daffodils towards the back near the rock, but then towards the front are all the muscari or grape hyacinth. And boy, let me tell you, those muscari, I originally had a clumping of 3 of them. Right behind me, they were underneath the rhododendron that's in this bed. And that's pretty much the only place I had it in my yard. And then I went to town, I dug them up and I just divided them and moved them all around my yard. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they look like this year. And then next year, they'll even put on a better show as they establish and get bigger. And then the year after, it's all good stuff. So when I'm cutting back right now, I'm pretty sure I had a stray echinacea or coneflower that also needs to be dug out of here. The issue is that the rock is here, there's an irrigation line here, and then there's a whole bunch of daffodils tucked in here. So whenever you have a perennial like that, it just gets tricky to try to remove it. I could keep it in here too, because technically all these daffodils will go by, and then there's really no other color in here at that time around in this area. So I'll have to wait and see. It is getting harder to cut this back though, because what's happening is I have the foliage of the daffodils in here, so I have to work around that. But now at least when the daffodils come up, it will look all nice and clean in here. You'll have to let me know in your yard if you have daffodils, and if so, have yours already bloomed, or are yours looking more like this? I think that's what's fun about sharing my garden on YouTube, is that we all can basically look at a garden like this garden, and then you can compare how are your plants doing in terms of growth, because maybe you live somewhere where your bulbs have already gone by, or maybe you live somewhere where they haven't even come up yet. Maybe you don't have a yard, so you can't plant any daffodils. But guess what? You can always try to plant them in a pot. And I plant tete-a-tete daffodils in pots, and they just look so cute. They're so striking. So you can absolutely plant up bulbs in pots. Last year I had some, not only daffodils in pots, but I even had some tulips in pots, and they just look so nice. So I highly encourage that you get creative when it comes to things like that. So once again, inside here, there are a bunch of the sea holly. And to be honest with you, there's a lot. You just don't see them. They haven't quite come up yet, but they're all in here. I think it's more of the more I talk about it, then I'm going to tell myself, now I need to do this. I need to take these out because I talked about it so much in my video. So it's going to motivate me. We're currently on the other side of the bed where I have my rhododendron, and it was just 1 or 2 years ago when I moved a bunch of the muscari towards the front here. So it should look pretty this year. And like I said, when you move bulbs around, it might take a few years for them to really put on a good show. Just be patient. I mean, of course you could go out and just keep buying bulbs, but if you have plenty of spring bulbs, you have enough stock that you can take them and divide them. And they appreciate it in the long run anyway. Also on this side of the rock are some hyacinths. So we're just basically cleaning it up so that we can wake them up a little bit more. The one thing that's in this flower bed that I don't like is a type of baby's breath. To be honest with you, I don't know what kind of baby's breath it is, but it's nothing like very pretty. And it's not fun to move. It doesn't like to be moved. I just don't like the look of it. But I will purposely keep some of it, either in this bed or a different bed, just so I can show you the flowers later this season. And then maybe someone can tell me what kind of baby's breath it is. It's nothing that I really care for. And I'm bringing it up because I have a whole bunch of it over here. And I'm thinking the best thing to do is to dig it up while it's nice and small, similar to the sea holly. So on a different day, I'll just come in here and get after that. And I know I'm not going to get all of it. It just, the way it works is, I don't want to call it invasive. Maybe it is. It's just the roots do go kind of everywhere. So I would like to pull as much of it out as I can. And there's a strawberry plant in here. I have no idea what kind of strawberry it is, but nevertheless, that will need to come out as well. Also in this area here, as well as in that area over there, there are a lot of peonies, and there's liatris. I'm trying to think, there's Joe Pyeweed, lots of different other plants that are in here. But I did a pretty good job in the fall time with cleaning this area up. I'm going to call this done because I could just keep coming in here and trying to get every little piece. But I think we're going to move on to the old arborvitae bed. I don't have a lot to do in there, so let me show you what I need to do. Now that we've finished cleaning up the side walkway bed, This is the old arborvitae bed. I'm going to pop up on the screen why I call it that. So when we first bought the house, the arborvitae were very small. And over the years, they got bigger and bigger. We never took care of them. Finally, they got to a point where they were too big and they were kind of dying off. So we ended up pulling them out a few years ago. If you have a tree or shrub that you don't like, don't keep it. I say pull it out. That's what I did. I pulled out some old arborvitae and I replaced them with some beautiful color. It's not hard to do. Just change out your beds if you are not happy with them. So all we're going to be doing is working in the center here, because you can see there's not a lot going on in here. Actually, there is. It's all dormant. You don't see it right now. There's a whole bunch of spring bulbs that I packed in here last year. I moved bulbs from that holding bed in my backyard into this bed, and I divided some other bulbs as well. So we're just going to clean up the ajuga that's in the center here. And also in the center, just in case you're wondering what those are rhododendrons. And they are little small ones that I had dug up from my mother-in-law's yard. And they never amounted to much because honestly, they were not placed in the right place in my yard. They've only been in this bed for a few years. So they're getting bigger every single year, and eventually they will find a new home in my yard. But until then, they are in here temporarily. You know that little hand rake I've been using quite a bit today? Well, this is a much larger rake, and it's very similar to that small hand rake. It works perfectly when you're trying to remove leaves from a shrub or a bush from the base of it, but also when you're trying to remove leaves on top of mulch, because it kind of keeps the mulch in place for the most part while removing the loose leaves. So all I'm going to do is gently rake. And there's two purposes for this. The first one is to remove the leaves that are in here, but then also it's to wake up the ajuga because it's very matted down from all the snow that was on it. Now you might be wondering, ajuga? Wait, what? I know there are some people that do not like ajuga. It's a ground cover, and you'll hear me say this all the time, but ground covers have a purpose in life, and they can behave as long as you tend to them and take care of them. Ground covers are supposed to cover the ground, and that's a good thing, but it's a bad thing if you put them in an area where you have a lot of other plants, and now they're choking out your plants. So in this particular flower bed, they really behave well. And you know, I even have drip irrigation in here, so they're getting taken care of very well in here. But what I do is I just keep them in check. As soon as they start crawling out of in areas that I'm not happy with, I just dig them out. And I can take them and put them in other areas of my yard, or I can sell them as part of my backyard plant nursery. Ajuga is not considered invasive here where I live in New Hampshire, and oftentimes they sell it at the nursery. So it is totally fine for me to be able to share this plant with other people. I always warn people about ground covers. I always tell them, don't plant a ground cover in an ornamental flower bed, unless it's towards the front of it, for example. But you don't want to just take over the whole entire flower bed. Now, this flower bed can actually be very ornamental, as I just showed you earlier. But I keep the ajuga in check. I keep it just towards the center of the bed. And it plays very nicely with its neighbors. I also have candy tuft in here, which is what this is. And I showed you candy tuft earlier. So I've been able to divide it and move that around. And I said I would do it last year and I didn't get to it. I'd like to take cuttings from my candy tuft. So I'm hoping to do that this year. I swear, Winnie is giving me a complex. It is dinner time again. I swear, every time I turn around and I make a video, it's dinner time. She's gonna have to wait. We're almost done, Winnie. I'm gonna keep raking out the leaves from the center, and where the leaves have collected inside of the candy tuft, I'll remove those as well. And on a different day, I'll show you my process for fertilizing my perennials and my shrubs. But let's just wrap this up because I have a cat that wants dinner. What a difference it makes to basically wake up, fluff up our perennials. things that have been matted down over the winter months. It just looks so much better. And, you know, over time, leaves will continue to come in all my flower beds, including this one. And I'm okay with that because that's just the reality of gardening. But just making progress, just being outside with nature, enjoying the nice warm weather, getting some vitamin D from the sun, you can't beat that. Around my yard, I do have a lot of trees, especially oak trees. And oak trees hold on to their leaves. So once the tree starts to leaf out, any of the leaves that are on there will drop. And as they drop, we'll just tackle them one leaf at a time. If you watched this video all the way to the end, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it inspired you, or maybe it gave you some ideas. I really enjoyed being out here and just bringing you along and showing you my process for starting my spring cleanup with my flower beds. I have a lot more flower beds I need to clean up, and we're going to do it one bed at a time. And we'll eventually come back to this bed and we'll prune back the dianthus, we'll fertilize the rhododendron, and take care of any other plant business that needs to be taken care of. I'd love to know how your gardens are doing. Have you been busy working out in your flower beds? Are you planting? Are you dividing? Is it snowing where you are? Please drop it down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.